Mercury in Libra is all about the balance. It's all about the harmony. They don't like to communicate unless unless they're asked to. It's the opposite of Aries, where instead of having action, it's reaction. Mercury in Libra people who have this placement tend to have more of a reactive sort of response to things. Again, response. It's all about response, not the initiative. It's all about, but it's also about weighing things before they say something, before they express something. They kind of get analytical in this case, where they carry over that Virgo thing, becomes analytical and goes. So when it comes to planning, which is also Mercury, it's almost like if they haven't learned and if they haven't woken up from that process, the indecisiveness will basically is what they'll be stuck with, so to speak. And it's yeah, there's a certain indecisive about it, but because of this placement, it also means that there's a certain diplomatic sort of feel to it. There's a I need to see things from both sides, similar to Gemini, where it kind of looks at many things, but instead of just many things, it's usually kind of like, is it something I should express about myself? It's ruled by Venus, so it also has to be pleasant. It has to be non-confrontational. But ironically, they don't mind debates, not arguments, debates. Debating is a thing of Libra, which is like, let's come to terms with it. Let's come to terms. What are the pros? What are the cons? And then let's weigh things, And sometimes to the point where maybe it's just too much. Especially if you have Mercury, let's say, square Neptune. Oh yeah, get lost in that sort of communication thing, and you think you're saying the right thing, and then you go, huh, what? Or if you have like quincunx to, like, say, a Pisces. Oh yeah, there's a certain whatever planet. I think usually if it's an active one of those. Like Mars in Pisces, for example, and quincunx to Mercury, there's a certain emotional sort of like teeter-totter kind of thing going on, and it's just like, but they have to learn to adapt. That's what quincunx aspects are. Anyways, Mercury in Scorpio. This is the placement that I have. Similar to Taurus, where it's slow, well, I have Uranus conjunct Mercury, so the intellect pops out. It comes out. It's a burst of energy, but just like the Mars ruled Scorpio, or secondary ruler, this is a sort of explosive effect to it as well. That's why Pluto is the higher vibration of Mars. This placement, this Pluto ruled placement, becomes, how do I explain this? It's very penetrative. As you can probably see, they kind of like, they can see through things. It's just like, you cannot lie to people with Mercury in Scorpio, right? Especially if you have Mercury conjunct Neptune in Scorpio. They'll definitely be able to see through you. Or rather, Pluto conjunct Mercury and probably Neptune as well. Okay? They'll be able to see right through you. You can't. There's a sense of tenacity as well to the way to communicate. If the Mercury is conjunct the Sun, the ego is affected, or if there's a square to the Moon, for example, the emotions will be forced. The way a person with Mercury and Scorpio will actually force that and say no, 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 no. A stubborn streak to it. It's very similar to Taurus. Taurus is probably even more stubborn that way, but they won't necessarily argue with you because that Scorpio carries on from that sort of like debating sort of quality of Libra, but also that, it's like Taurus. It's very stubborn, but but again, going back to Mercury and Taurus a little bit here, Mercury and Taurus are very stubborn with the way they communicate. So if they don't like the way you communicate, if it's too like complicated and complex, what? They're just not going to say anything. They'll just like sit there and pretend you're there. Like that. Scorpio is very similar, but Scorpio will want to have an honest it has to be transformative. It has to have direction. It has to have purpose, right? It's ruled by Pluto. It's out there, so it has to go beyond just stubbornness. It has to go beyond. Does that make sense? Right. So very penetrative. Very like. They know how to also persuade you to do something because they can see right through it, and they won't necessarily say something unless it's right. Depending on how much growth they've had in their entire lives, right? Where Mercury has become matured, it has evolved. Okay, let's go into Mercury in Sagittarius. This is where I've met people like this. A lot of people of this placement, very exaggerative. Almost to the point where just they don't care about the details anymore. They don't care whether it's right. All I know is like, this is what I know. It kind of carries on to that Scorpio thing. They can see through things. They're very highly intuitive. But sometimes they can get things wrong. Too much so, because it's just Jupiter ruled sign is like exaggerative. It can go beyond what's necessary. Mercury is just here. Jupiter's like, right? So, they tend to communicate with a lot of like ongoing, like sort of that Energizer Bunny sort of thing. That's Mercury and Sagittarius, but not necessarily for the sake of talking. It's more this way. It comes to them and they intuit things, not on purpose, but if it's like okay. And Mercury in Sagittarius is unlike Gemini, where it's like Gemini goes to this direction, but with Sagittarius, it's not multi-directional. It is in one line. Think of it this way. The analogy, I don't know if this is an analogy, but think of it as like it's going this way, and if it starts to feel like there's no adventure there, it's going to go to another direction, and then another direction, and another direction, and so it's still sticking to that same path. So it's like the arrow, right? But if it's missing something, if their aim is not direct into something and it's not really getting it, let's keep going. I don't want to stay here. Too much. Right? In fact, because it is already too much, meaning it's expansive. It wants to expand. It wants to go out there, not stick to one thing just because it's like, right? So, most likely because it's not detail oriented and it's in actually opposite of, it's in a sign, because it's in Sagittarius, it's in detriment, so that means it's not at home, meaning communication isn't really that strong. It is there, it's just more this way. Can I see it? Or what am I picking up? What am I picking up on the way?